Hello, everybody. Welcome to another review of Wheel of Time, the television series on Amazon Prime. We are talking today about Season 1, Episode 5. I am one of your reviewers, Cody Haggard, and across the internet from me, my great friend and co-reviewer, Zach Butler. Zach, are you ready for this? How are you feeling about this episode? Because for me, Episode 5 was full of ups and downs and had me kind of scratching my head of, I don't really know how I feel about this, at least after I watched it. I've processed my thoughts. I'm here to talk about it, and there's some good, there's quite a bit of bad, actually, and we're here to review this episode. Zach, how are you feeling coming into this?
Man, so I don't want to completely crap on this episode because I think this episode had one strong trait, and that trait was building an emotional connection to the characters. Now, granted, you built probably the strongest emotional connection to a character that goes in, like, we're spoilers at this point, but if you haven't watched the show, you probably should not be watching episode 5 of a review. But the character we build the most, like the strongest emotional attachment to, goes and kills himself at the end of the episode. So it is kind of a minor character. So it's a kind of misplaced, but it builds an emotional connection, I think, strongest between Lan and Moraine. You get the idea of, okay, this is what happens when your Aes Sedai dies. And this is what happens to the warders. Like, it is near impossible for them to continue on. And so you get that feeling between Lan and Moraine, and they kind of recognize that at the end, like, oh man, this could be, us if things go wrong on this adventure. But I think that's probably the only good thing about this episode, man. So let's dive into it, man. Let's start with the positives, man, because I think we got a lot of critiques to this one, but let's start with the positives. Let's give people the ups in this one. So what did you think was a strength in episode 5?
I'm going to say the new character, Loyal, even though his costume, the makeup they have on his face looks a little strange, but Loyal...
This is the Ogier, right?
He's the Ogier. He's the big guy with the deep voice. I really enjoyed his characterization on screen. I liked how he kind of came across as this, like, quirky character with really no social boundaries, because that's kind of how I imagined him in the books. I think it's a great characterization. Actually, the performance, I look forward to kind of seeing him more as the show goes on, because he's a enjoyable character. He reminds me in a lot of ways, every fantasy has that character who's kind of there, who has like this wisdom, knowledge. He's a bookworm, right? He's a bookworm. He knows a bunch of stuff, and he is just in general like also a really good supporter of the characters in the series as it'll go on. So I look forward to see what they'll do with this character. Thought that bringing Loyal in, the Ogier, was good. Another thing that I thought was pretty strong in this episode, while we're kind of talking about characters and performances, I thought, even though I didn't love the story side of it, I actually thought that Lan being around the other warders, his exchanges with Moraine, and kind of what's going on there, you got to see a deeper side to their connection. But more importantly, Lan as a warder, the last couple episodes, you've kind of really gotten the opportunity to dig deep into who he is and his personality, what he values, what matters to him, and kind of like what life as a warder is like, which I actually think is pretty cool, because you really don't get a lot of that stuff till like way later in the book. So I think putting it in now is good. Otherwise, Lan would come across as like, he doesn't say much. He's, like we said early on, he's a doer, not a talker. So I think as far as like kind of digging in, kind of seeing a new character and then digging in deep to an established character, I thought that was pretty good. But for the most part, I don't have a ton of great things to say about this episode, because the way it came across to me is it felt like a typical mid-season filler episode, which when you have 20 episodes in a season, that I can understand. When you have 8, that doesn't make as much sense to me. So anyway, that's kind of how it came across to me. I like some things going on with the characters. I thought the White Cloak camp, I thought that the villain in there, he's definitely sinister. You don't like him, and you're not supposed to like him. And so he delivers a good performance, and you kind of are. The last 2 episodes have kind of, as an audience member, you've been drawn in and really started to dislike the villains, or in the case of Logain, kind of like, I can get it, but he's not right at the end of the day. So those are some good moments for me. How about you, man?
Yeah, I think Child Villan or Villar, I forget the guy's name, the White Cloak.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. Vlad, maybe,
Vlad, yeah. But I thought was a great segment. It really, I was wondering when they were going to bring back that group of people that we saw in one of the first or second episodes. So I think they really showed the misplaced righteousness of that group, where they're sent to stamp out Aes Sedai. They're gonna still respect, the boundaries of social norms. So like, they're not, like they say in the episode, they're not gonna kill the Tinkers, but they're not gonna hesitate to beat the crap out of them. So like, they're seen as evil and they're portrayed as evil, and they do a great job of that. And then the head guy is a really good villain. I hope he's not dead. I don't think he is. I think he just is wounded. But I hope that they bring him back. Because at this point, man, I read the book, but I'm kind of confused as to where we're going. And so kind of to depart from talking about the positives, because I don't really have much more than the White Cloaks performance and the emotional connection. There's a lot lacking in the episode. And so I don't know if it's they're really just going wild with source material at this point, and we're kind of confused as to where we are. They skipped a lot to get to Tar Valon in the book, and yet in the movie we're 5 episodes in and we're already in Tar Valon. So you tell me, man, what is going on with the story at this point compared to the book?
Well, I think what's happening at this point in the story, that there are some problems, is now we are in a position to where everything that has happened, where everybody is in episode 5, it has turned out to be really convenient that everybody on the same day at the same time are all in the same place that they just happen to be adventuring in. It kind of departs from logic that was built up in the book to kind of make it make sense how everybody meets up. And I'm not going to say what happens in the book. For those who are watching this and haven't read the books, might want to go read it. Don't want to spoil that for you, because I do think we're at a point where I can honestly say that, hey, you can read the books and you're going to enjoy a significantly different story. I think it's all going to get to a very similar place by the end of the season. But at the same time, there's so much that's cut, so much that's changed. And so far, remember last week we talked about they're really going to have to prove that these changes were the right choices. And episode 5 did not prove that these were some of the right choices, because I just thought in general they kind of needed to get everyone in the same place. But at the same time, I felt like the meeting up with Nynaeve, with Rand and Matt, that should have been a huge deal, right? These people have been separated for over a month, and it just was it felt like a really small scene while we're spending so much screen time, getting the backstory of this Steppen guy who then just goes and offs himself, who's a character who's not even in the books, at least up to the point that I've read. And I'm just I get it, what we're trying to do here, but I would have liked to have seen more of Rand, Matt, and Nynaeve, and really kind of, seeing what are they going to do, right? How is she going to respond when she has to go back to the tower? And I would have liked to seen hey, where were you? And really kind
Mm-hmm.
of see her wrestle with like, oh, hey, I just met up with these people and I'm trying to keep it a secret. Like these were things I would have rather have seen play out to their conclusion in this episode than what we got. Obviously, in episode 6, these are things that are going to have to be addressed, but I wanted to see it all within the same episode. It just felt like that
Mm-hmm.
was the build up, and I don't know, everything just kind of felt like a little flat
Mm-hmm.
with our main characters outside of Lan and
Mm-hmm.
maybe Moraine if you want to like put her in there, because I would even say like even Nynaeve, who had the big showcase of power in episode 4, is then kind of like shoved aside as like, hey, you need to stay in this room, and we get why,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I would have liked to have seen this as an opportunity to kind of, bring. I personally would have liked them all to come together all at one time at the same time. The show decided not to do it that way, but yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was the strange choices.
No, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think we probably could have spent another episode on them journeying towards Tarvalon.
Mm-hmm.
I also agree. I thought that a time jump was a little extreme, especially
In an 8-episode show.
Yeah, well, an 8-episode show in even like in an epic fantasy, like you don't really, if you time jump, it's not that prominent. Like you just kind of feel like you get that feeling like, man, they've been going for a while. You don't just prominently say, hey, 1 month later in a epic fantasy. And so I think that was a little jarring, so that when they got to Tarvalon, and yeah, they all got there at the same time, and like I'm not as bothered with that because it is cinema, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna find a convenient way to get them all together again. But it felt a little cheapened because they just time jumped them to Tarvalon, and it's like, yeah, they went through some hard things, but did they really go through some hard things? Like there was like a couple challenges. Really, Shar Logoth is the only hard like thing that has repercussions right now compared to like where everyone's at. So I think that it felt a little cheapened that they got to Tarvalon in so short of a time. So and then it's I don't know if we're running into, and I don't want to use this as an excuse because obviously there are shows and there are movies out there that have dealt with complex plots and in a plethora of characters. Like we have, and we hate to compare it to it because it's not the same thing, but people are going to do it anyways. But if we're looking at, A Song of Ice and Fire, if we're looking at George R. R. Martin, there are a ton of characters in that book that all have depth, just like Wheel of Time, but they somehow managed to bring out that personal connection with those characters. You really cared about a lot of those people and you really cared about what they were doing. And I don't know right now if Wheel of Time is struggling with, this cast of characters and it's already so large and they're trying to give everyone equal screen time and they're trying to give everyone time to develop. And so that maybe one episode we're going to focus on Lan and Moraine, and then another episode we're going to focus more on Egwene and Perrin, and that because we're like getting bits and pieces, but like you said, it feels flat just because they're really, maybe it's because they really focus on one character and you really make that connection. So then when you go to a Matt and oh man, I just blanked on his name, Rand. So when you go to them, like their performance doesn't feel as strong as, when Lan is bawling his eyes out and like smacking his chest over his friend. And then, you have kind of a moody Matt and Rand who seems completely like ambivalent to his friend. Like sometimes he's like, oh man, Matt, we gotta, I'm worried about you. And then other times it's like I just feel like that's his only purpose right now is just to feel bad for Matt. And I'm like, Rand is so much deeper than that. So I don't know, man. I think that this episode to me did not deliver because it was, and it's not so much as it was lacking in action because there really was no action or fighting or anything. It was a lot of talking, and there's a way to make dialogue compelling, especially in film. I mean, it's an art for sure, but you can have scenes where people are just talking and you can end that scene and people can go, oh my gosh, like that was crazy. Like look at House of Cards. House of Cards is one of those series that could just deliver just punches with dialogue.
Yeah.
And I felt like this just didn't do it, man. This didn't do it. Like we got a baby step towards wherever we're going. We got a baby step. It wasn't a full step. It was just kind of like we're just, moving upon one space instead of two.
Yeah.
And it's like in the middle of a season, that's kind of hard, man, especially when you come off of, episode 4, which we both agreed was probably the strongest episode. It's difficult to have maybe a regression immediately following that. So yeah, man, I wasn't a huge fan of this episode. I was not a huge fan of Egwene and Perrin's story, especially that they're trying to, portray Perrin now, and they're trying to get to that point of like, hey, Perrin, it's not your fault. It's okay. And Egwene is doing that already. And it's like, it's episode 5. Like, let that simmer for more than just 5 episodes. I know he's struggling, and he's kind of just been this like one morose personality the entire series. Let's be honest. Like 5 episodes, he has been the same character. He's just been moody and down and regretful. And already they're trying to be like, hey, it's not your fault. And I completely disagree with that because it is his fault. Like that's what my issue was, man. It's just like it is your fault. You did kill your wife. Like I hate when that happens in movies where it's like you did a thing, but it's not your fault. It's like, yes, it was the heat of battle. Like that's what the route you got to go. But
yeah,
to say to cheapen it, to shorten it to just it's not your fault. It is your fault. Yeah. So I just they're floundering so badly with that storyline, and those are 2 really good characters in the book, and so it's hard to watch that and go, but they're more than that. Especially Perrin. Yeah. Perrin is not like that in the book, and so
no,
it's so weird to watch that. But I don't know. How do you feel about that plot line?
That plot line, I thought it was nice to have tension in their story. That was nice because as much as it should have been tension, them running from the wolves just never felt like tension, kind of being manipulated to being into the tribe with the Tinkers. That never felt like legit tension. And I thought that scene played out well. And the thing that we're at now is some of the scenes that happened in this in this particular episode. I feel like the reason why I have a lot of strong feelings that are more negative here is because some of the scenes in the book are some of my favorite moments from the book. Like when Perrin and Egwene escape from the White Cloaks camp, the way that happens in the book is one of the best scenes. And what happens in Tar Valon doesn't really happen the way it happens in the book, like with Logain and all that. Like that was another one of my favorite scenes that is completely like not even like we're not even close to similar here. And so that was one of those things where it's like, man, those were some of the most memorable scenes in my mind. And I it's got to be like a lot of longtime fans. Those have to be some key moments too, because there's some of the best moments in the book. But so you see this episode, and it's hard to detach that lens from it. And I'm really trying hard. But when it feels like it doesn't really hit the way that it should, and after kind of a mid-season climactic point in episode 4, it would have made sense to just be like, hey, let's let this be the episode where everyone meets up. Let's forget Steppen. Let's forget him dying. Let's forget his grief. We can speed that up. We can show that. We can show the emotion. We don't have to spend 15 minutes of screen time doing it. What we need to do is we need to get these characters back together. And then for our last 3 episodes, ramp up their adventure, make this season finale a banger. And that's what I would have liked to see. However, I'm holding out hope. This is my optimism in the midst of all this, because Brandon Sanderson, in his long Reddit post on the show that we read this week, you can go check it out if you want. We'll put a link down in the description of the video and the podcast here. But he did say episode 6 was his favorite of the series, and I look forward to it because it probably is very good. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think there is hope. But let's go ahead. Let's wrap it up here. Let's take a couple minutes to just give our concluding thoughts, our outlook for the last 3 episodes, and we'll put a score on it out of 10. So Zach, what are you thinking?
Yeah, this episode to me was like coming off a big win, and then you just underperform the next week. You beat, a top 5 team, and you're all like riding that high, and you're super pumped on the bus ride home, and it's a great week of practice.
A couple of big plays in the game, but
you get to the next week, and you just you don't do well on a mediocre team, and you're like, man. So I'm hoping the last 3 episodes pick it up, that we rally here. I see the potential in some of these storylines. I obviously know where Eye of the World ends. I don't know where they're gonna end season 1 at this point, because the source material is completely out the window at this point. So I think there's potential with these storylines. I think honestly the Matt and Rand storyline is going to be the strongest. I would put my money on that one. That one I think is going to make this season ending episode a banger. So I'm optimistic. I am. I don't feel good after this week, but I can see, you go back and watch the tape, you see the good things that you did, and you're like, all right, maybe we can do that for episode 6. And it encourages me a lot that Brandon Sanderson said episode 6 was his favorite. So I am looking forward to the next one.
Yes, I'm right there with you, looking forward to the next one. I would definitely say that out of all the episodes so far this season, I'm going to have to put this at just like an average rating. So for me, an average is 5 out of 10. And that sounds really low because we're all used to like a 50% being an F, like in school and all of that. But 5 out of 10, it's average, right? It's not going to wow you, but it wasn't so bad to the point where there was no enjoyment to be had here. There was some good moments, good character introduction, and I thought Tar Valon looked wonderful. I enjoyed it aesthetically, the being in the city. But gotta give it a 5 out of 10. I'm optimistic. I hope they're going to start to make their choices make sense in the last 3 episodes. They're really going to have to prove like, hey, we changed a lot from the source material, but we made it work. And I'm hoping they can do that. I look forward to them doing that. But we'll talk about it next week when episode 6 comes out. But thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to sign off here now. Let us know what you thought about episode 5 of season 1 of The Wheel of Time, and what are you thinking about the show at this point? Are you excited for it? Does it have you worried? Are we completely wrong? Was episode 5 amazing and we're just missing something? I'm willing to hear it all out. But until next week, we're going to sign off, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.